In ancient Greece, the philosophical ideal was a word that literally translates to leisure. For most of recorded history, freedom from labor was the primary signal of high social status. Contemplation and civic debate were reserved for the elite, while labor was the mark of necessity. But that centuries-old hierarchy has been overwritten. By 1899, the economist Thorstein documented conspicuous leisure. Elites displayed ample free time through hunting, patronage of the arts, or travel to publicly signal that their wealth did not require daily effort to maintain. The Industrial Revolution reorganized human time around factory shifts and strict clock schedules. Business became an association of the working and middle classes. Upward mobility meant accumulating enough capital to eventually escape the regimented schedule. Today, in the modern knowledge economy, that equation has flipped. A 2016 study by Sylvia Blettzad and her colleagues found that describing yourself as overworked now projects high status. When professionals mention a hectic schedule, peers perceive them as possessing rare skills and high market demand. The empty calendar has become a source of quiet anxiety, while a lack of leisure time serves as a proxy for indispensability. Business moved from a marker of necessity to a signal of professional worth. This creates a paradox. We are biologically wired to seek rest. Yet modern professionals manufacture busy, fear empty afternoons, and experience genuine agitation when disconnected from their tasks. Imagine a single human figure standing on a blank canvas. To see why that figure cannot stop moving, we have to look at the heavy layers of paint trapping them in place. There are 4 distinct overlapping forces applying that paint: our evolutionary neurobiology, our existential psychology, the economic structure we live in, and the digital architecture we carry. We often treat our lack of free time as a simple time management flaw. However, busyness functions as a self-reinforcing ecosystem. To escape it, we have to look at how the trap is built. The first pillar is neurobiology. Dopamine is often mischaracterized as a pleasure chemical, but neuroscientists like Wolfram Schultz have shown it primarily responds to the anticipation of a reward as well as to novelty and uncertainty. Modern digital work is tuned to this mechanism. Clearing an email or checking a notification provides a continuous low-grade dopamine drip. The brain isn't responding to the importance of the task. It is responding to the structural cue of ping response and microcompletion. In 2014, a study published in Science tested what happens when that drip stops. Participants were left alone in an empty room for 15 minutes with nothing to do but sit with their own thoughts. A substantial number of participants actively chose to administer mild electric shocks to themselves rather than endure unstructured cognitive stillness. This constant activity also triggers cortisol. In small doses, the activation of our sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, can feel energizing, creating the exhilaration of sprinting toward a deadline. Over time, the brain associates the steady stream of tasks with a necessary baseline of stimulation. For a brain accustomed to constant input, unstructured stillness is processed as a state of withdrawal. Beneath the neurochemistry lies an older drive. In the 17th century, Blaise Pascal observed that humanity's problems stem from an inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Clinical psychologists call this experiential avoidance. It is a pattern where people structure their behavior specifically to avoid confronting uncomfortable internal experiences or a creeping sense of dread. A packed schedule provides a socially acceptable alibi. When your day is consumed by urgent emails and external demands, you have zero cognitive bandwidth to ask if your life is meaningful or if you are becoming the person you want to be. This avoidance is tied to occupational identity fusion. In many professional cultures, a person's primary concept of self is dependent on their job title. A full calendar provides the constant evidence used to substantiate their own value. Removing this structured busyness through retirement or job loss triggers profound identity disruption. Without the schedule, individuals lose the primary metric they have used to define their worth. We compulsively fill our calendars to avoid the existential discomfort of confronting who we are when we are not producing. Treating busyness purely as a psychological defense ignores economic reality. Real wages for many workers have stagnated for decades. For millions of households, a packed schedule is a mandatory survival response to maintain a standard of living. Look at this diagram of total cognitive band. With economist Sanel Mulanathan and psychologist Eldar Shafir, demonstrated that a severe lack of time or money creates a scarcity trap. As rigid blocks of urgent demands squeeze your attention, your available space for long-term planning shrinks. This narrowed focus forces reactive short-term decision M. You take on a quick obligation to survive today, which generates knotted commitments tomorrow, compounding your future time poverty. This economic pressure is backed by cultural history. Sociologist Max Weber traced how the Protestant work ethic secularized, turning diligent labor into a marker of moral virtue. By extension, idleness became viewed as a moral deficiency. In a precarious economy, this manifests as presentism. Employees respond to emails at midnight as a defensive signal. Visible overwork serves as evidence of commitment aimed at avoiding the next round of layoffs. Structural precarity forces workers to treat performative busyness as an economic shield. When the market punishes stillness with lost income, staying in motion becomes a rational defense. The final pillar is technological. Digital platforms utilize B.F. Skinner's research on intermittent reinforcement. Unpredictable rewards like a new message or a red notification badge are engineered into software to maximize engagement. Cal Newport makes a distinction between deep work, sustained undistracted focus, and shallow work, comprised of rapid logistically necessary digital pings like coordinating schedules and answering status updates. This animation shows two timelines of human attention. On the top is deep work. On the bottom is shallow work. Every time your attention shifts between digital streams, your brain pays a cognitive penalty known as a switching cost. Time tracking data consistently reveals a stark reality across a workday filled with meetings and interruptions. Many knowledge workers achieve only 2 to 3 hours of genuine productivity. This environment creates an incentive for productivity theater. Answering 50 emails provides visible units of activity, while writing one original analysis might take all day and look like you're doing nothing. Employees naturally prioritize easily visible low-value tasks. Modern technology has optimized the professional environment to keep us in a state of exhaustion, while producing little of lasting value. The physical consequences of this ecosystem are measurable. Chronic cortisol elevation degrades immune function and disrupts sleep architecture. A 2015 analysis published in The Lancet found that working 55 hours or more a week measurably increases the risk of stroke. The psychological endpoint is clinical burnout. Researchers like Christina Maslach identified 3 core dimensions: emotional exhaustion, cynical detachment, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. We tend to assume this constant grind is a fixed feature of human nature. Anthropologist Marshall Salins challenged this by studying what he termed the original affluent society. Salins found that many pre-agricultural hunter-gatherer societies devoted substantially fewer hours to subsistence labor than modern post-industrial workers. The remainder of their day was spent on rest, socializing, and ritual. Even today, comparative labor statistics show massive variation. Countries like Germany and France maintain shorter working hours and legal protections for vacation time. In these contexts, protecting leisure is a marker of a well-ordered life. This variation suggests our relationship with time is not a fixed biological destiny. It is a cultural and economic arrangement that other societies have structured differently. Dismantling this ecosystem requires structural change. Some organizations use results-only work environments that strictly evaluate the actual output a worker generates, ignoring the performative hours logged at a desk. On a personal level, clinicians use boredom exposure. You start with short intervals and gradually build a tolerance for unstructured time, sitting with the discomfort without immediately reaching for a replacement stimulus. You have to conduct a time audit, log your hours, and categorize them by the value created, separating deep work from the dopamine-driven feeling of merely being occupied. Meaningful, demanding work remains a source of human flourishing. The risk lies in the compulsive activity that persists long after its utility has vanished, crowding out reflection and rest. Navigating an environment engineered for distraction requires a willingness to sit in a quiet room. We must find out what surfaces when the noise finally stops.